Let's get right into it. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Sean O'Malley, who this past weekend defeated handily Marlon Chito Vera in the main event of UFC 299 in front of 19,000 strong at the Kaseya Center in Miami, Florida. Technically evening their series one apiece between O'Malley and Vera, but this one, there was no fluke about it and no controversy about it. Mark, while you're still doing that, I'll throw it over to Omar first. What was your impressions of O'Malley's performance and Vera's performance in this main event title bout? Omar?
Oh, I don't know why I just heard Mark. My bad. Drunk. All right. O'Malley, I thought, did fantastic. There's not a lot of performances you're going to see at that high level that are going to be that crazy, right? We talked about Volkanovski a lot because of how good he is and how one-sided a lot of his fights are. I think we knew that Chito Vera was going to have rough beginning. I think everybody knew that. I think he knew that. I think Perillo knew that. I think we kind of gave one, definitely, I think, at every stretch of the imagination. I think we all knew that he was going to lose round one, probably round two, but you never know. And then 3, 4, and 5, I think, is where we all thought the fight was really going to start. And Chito never really got anywhere, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think round 4 might have been his best round, which I still think he lost. But it was the better round of all of his other rounds. And I don't know, man. It's difficult to gauge the Chito thing, because Chito is somebody who's very, very skilled, but kind of like we alluded to earlier with my issues as far as anxiety and things like that are concerned, he kind of had that look to him, right? Where he just couldn't let the trigger go. He couldn't get off. And he was just kind of standing there and just kind of being a punching bag for a good majority of that fight. And obviously there were moments that he had in that fight, but overall it was Sean O'Malley dancing around, popping out jabs, throwing kicks out, keeping the distance. And obviously the news of that whole night was the knees, right? He threw a couple of knees there that would have changed people's lives, let alone, standing upright. And Chito has a chin that is apparently made of some goddamn star material, because he doesn't go anywhere. I mean, you could literally hit him with a baseball bat and apparently he just wouldn't go down. So, a lot of takeaways from that fight as far as, what we can expect from Sean O'Malley going forward, what we could expect, at least from the toughness of Chito Vera. That obviously came away higher than ever, but it wasn't a great performance from Chito, right? Like, if you're talking about the durability and the toughness of a guy by the end of the fight, chances are that fight didn't go really well for him. And that's kind of where we're at with Chito. As far as Sean is concerned, Sean's star is shining brighter than ever at this point. I mean, it could be argued that he put on a clinic. He put on a little bit of a masterclass when it came to movement, when it came to volume. It was a beautiful performance from him. And, I don't think him not being able to knock out Chito had anything to say about his performance, because the man threw everything, including the kitchen sink at Chito, and Chito just didn't go down. But he kept his composure. He didn't allow that to deter him from continuously focusing on his approach, which in a lot of cases it does, right? It's like guys get into this thing where it's like, God damn, what else do I got to do to hit to hurt this guy, to finish this guy? And Sean just kept focused and kept going straight. Yeah, I love that fight, man. That's honestly a fight I could watch over a bunch of different times.
In spite of how much of a Chito fan you are, that I know you to be.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But it's difficult not to give Sean O'Malley his flowers, right? It's not like it was a close fight that I feel like O'Malley, that Vera got robbed from or anything like that. Vera just didn't do what he needed to do. He just didn't. There's not much defending that you can do for Vera. I don't think Vera can defend anything. It just didn't happen. He just didn't do it. And Sean O'Malley just performed.
Mark, let's bring you in here. Speaking of that performance, what were your thoughts of Suga's performance and also Vera's performance?
Yeah, Omar, you used a word that I will echo. That was the absolute definition of a masterclass. People like to use this word, and sometimes it gets thrown around a little too freely. But this is what this word should be reserved for. There was nearly nothing that Chito Vera could do to Sean O'Malley in that cage on Saturday night. His brain and his body were both in a blender. He had no idea what was coming. Sean built him up and played him like a puppet as that fight went on. He had him either biting on feints or frozen on feints. He had him reacting to the thing he did the prior time in a similar exchange, but now this time he went high instead of low or whatever it may be. It was like he had Chito on a string. I mean, he even had Chito kind of cowering and covering up and backpedaling at numerous times in that fight, which is wild to see. Like it was almost like Sean had a weapon and Chito didn't, and he was just trying to survive in there. Like that's how little offense there was coming back from him, and obviously credit him because he is a inexplicable level of tough, and his chin is made out of I don't even know what the fuck what. I mean, it's unreal that he just can't even be dropped. Even in this fight, the big knee, he wasn't dropped. It makes no sense. So credit to him for that. But in terms of the fight, I said he was just trying to survive, and really that's what it was, because offensively he didn't have anything. He couldn't even figure out how he wanted to enter, how he wanted to approach it. It's at some point I thought maybe we're going to look to grapple here, since obviously the striking is going so badly. It seemed like that was never even considered. I don't know if he just thought he couldn't even get into Sean's hips to consider that. But like Sean was just gone from the pocket before Chito could even throw the second strike after his initial setup strike. Like he had nothing for him. And like I said earlier, his brain was just in a blender trying to figure out how to approach that fight. And before he knew it, 25 minutes were gone. I mean, he landed the big body shot in the last 5 seconds. So maybe he figured it out right then, but a little too late. It was a rough night for Chito, honestly. And I've seen some fighters kind of giving him shit, like saying like that was bad. So not the best night for him. It was a incredible night for Sean, though. I think that was a true star-making performance for Sean, who I used to think would get wrecked by Merab. And now, even though I would still pick Merab, I think that's a really interesting fight, way more so than I did before, just from watching the movement and the mind of Sean O'Malley. Like he showed a lot in this fight. His footwork, obviously the hand speed, his feints, the way that he will set you up and pre-program you to react in certain ways as the fight goes on. Just his brain in terms of striking is on a different level. He's a master, and it was a masterclass.
Yeah, man.
You also have to give credit to Sean's cardio. You know, people aren't really giving Sean's cardio any kind of recognition. I mean, that man threw 300 strikes throughout that fight, maybe a little bit more, landed probably half of them, if not maybe a little bit more. I mean, that dude was nonstop throughout that entire fight. And somebody like Merab is probably going to get challenged the most by somebody who has a gas tank who could rival his. And I'm not saying that Sean could technically rival his. However, I don't know anybody that can rival Merab's goddamn cardio, to be honest, in the UFC period, no matter what weight class we're talking about. But it does bode well for Sean that it seems like he can last movement-wise for 5 rounds the way that he did. It's going to need to obviously include some takedown defense when it comes to Merab, because Merab is definitely liable to body slam that kid. But, you know, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yep.
Let's talk about what is next for these two men going forward at bantamweight. Although, speaking of, it might not be bantamweight for the champ, Sean O'Malley, who in his post-fight interview in the Octagon with Joe Rogan, who does he call out? He calls out Ilia Topuria, the now featherweight champion. Mark, what do you think of that?
It's not my favorite. The answer for me is very certainly Merab Dvalishvili. You cannot have, in my opinion, you cannot have a dominant number one contender waiting in the wings and only have one title defense and say you're going to go fight in a different division. It's not like, okay, even guys that have done this, like Conor, for example, like he sort of cleaned it out on his way up. Like there was no one else there who it was like, oh, but like this featherweight, he didn't fight yet. Like it was kind of like, well, like he smoked him. Now he's going to go up. This one, it's like there is a clamoring that he needs to fight Merab. So I don't love it. And Topuria has 0 title defenses. Like if they both want to get 3 defenses and build their stars even more, and then maybe we revisit this if they're both still champ, like, yeah, that will be amazing. And that will be a huge fucking deal. But right now, Sean has to fight Merab. And I would be pretty disappointed if he doesn't.
Omar, your thoughts?
It has to be Merab. And to Merab's credit, if you look at Ilia Topuria and you look at Merab, right, in terms of MMA mainstream popularity, right, Merab has been putting in that work. He is all over social media. He is trying to get the fight. He is trying to build the fight. Topuria is holding a belt up in Spain. And God bless him. He fucking should be. He just beat basically the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. So I'm not giving him any shit about what he is doing right now. But I don't think Sean O'Malley is the next thing for him at this point. I think that it should be Merab. I think Merab, like I said, has been putting in that promotional effort. I think I just sent it to you guys. I just saw a video of him that he's putting up, like getting ready and like what, you know, him running in the morning and drinking gas to get ready for the morning and then running alongside Teslas in the morning. Like Merab is he's just so fun now. You know what I mean? And just publicly fun. Because I think he was always like this, but I think now they're just putting him on video. And now we just all get to enjoy it all together. And so it's just hard for me not to imagine that fight wouldn't get more buzz at this point than a Topuria fight. So from a business perspective, let alone what is justifiably correct in MMA, the Merab fight, I think, makes all the sense in the world.
I have to counter that a little bit.
All right.
Ilia Topuria just got like honored in the middle of the field at a Real Madrid game. That is a huge deal. That is like the
100%.
biggest stadium, one of the biggest stadiums and sporting events in the world. And the man has almost 6 times as many followers as Merab does. So I don't know that the buzz argument is correct.
I mean, he definitely has all of Spain behind him, and it's definitely not an argument for sure. He definitely has a complete country behind him, where a lot of these guys, that's not always the case. But Spain is a young country when it comes to MMA, and he's like the guiding force at this point. So I totally get that. But what I mean is his presence in social media has just been more promotional based than Topuria has been. Topuria's, like I said, he's been getting his accolades. He's been going around doing the victory tour and like soaking up all of what he's earned by beating Volkanovski. So for me, Merab just makes the sense.
Merab has also attended seemingly every UFC event in the past like 3 months. He's had every single one. Like he is putting in the work, as you said.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny too that both Merab and Topuria are Chito's, I guess, 2 potential opponents, and they're both Georgian.
Yeah, which I think is why Ilia was so quick to be like, you have to fight Merab.
Oh,
Yeah.
that too, sure.
Because it's his boy.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about Chito Vera, guys. Where could he go from here now at bantamweight? Omar?
This one's a little weird for me. I kind of had 2 thoughts. I thought either potentially the winner of Deiveson Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt, or it could be Song Yadong. Those are kind of the 2 that I landed on.
Mark?
Yeah, I have 2 as well. Obviously, I've said on here that I really want to see this Henry Cejudo, Brandon Moreno fight that Cejudo laid out a challenge for. If not, I think Cejudo could work as an opponent for Chito, especially because he's kind of had a lot to say about Chito, so there would be some heat easily built on that one. But if not that, I also think it's a good time to revisit a Song Yadong fight. Yadong won the first one. The decision was hotly debated, and if there was ever a time to go back to it and kind of settle that, I think right now, when both guys are coming off a loss and don't necessarily have something else in front of them, I think it's a fairly perfect time to do that.
Nice.
Mike, what did you think of this fight before we move on? feel like it was a big deal performance. I'm curious what you thought.
I totally agreed that I think it was a masterclass on O'Malley's part and a frustrating watch for Vera. But it was kind of like, I think many of us, I think a lot of purists and diehards kind of saw it coming for Chito's point of view, knowing that Chito can be a bit of a slow starter, and given the fact that he's giving up quite a bit of in the department of attributes with O'Malley. O'Malley quite a bit taller and longer, although I think he's, for a guy who's like 5'8" in Chito, his reach is like close to 6 foot.
Yeah, that's right. He has very long
that,
legs as well.
Yeah, but that
Sean
being said,
also,
Chito, yeah,
he visibly looked stronger. Like he looked like he was in like more muscle on Sean O'Malley this time around. Like he's a slim dude, so it's not like he's like jacked to shit. But there was something about him where you could tell he just seemed a little bit more solid than he has in the past.
for sure. But in terms of the attributes thing, I also thought that Chito was having a hard time finding O'Malley throughout the night, and that I think that was a testament to both O'Malley's movement combined with his height advantage that he used very well. I think Chito had a hard time reaching his head. And yeah, O'Malley too busy. Chito not busy enough. O'Malley has great power, great pop to his punches. And Chito, in spite of how goddamn tough he is and how much of a warrior spirit he has, that wasn't the formula on this night to beat Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley, he goes back to the claim that he has defeated virtually every man that he's ever faced, except for the no contest against Munoz because of the eye poke. But the guy's special, man. The guy is special. I also wonder, and this doesn't have to be a discussion for tonight, do you think he is the face of the UFC at this point? Yes or no? Mark?
No.
Omar? Sean O'Malley?
No, but he's not far off though.
He's one of, I would say.
He's on his way.
He's one of the biggest stars in the sport.
Yeah.
And in the promotion for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I don't know.
I definitely think he's more in tune than, so like, while Conor McGregor I still think is the face, even though the man hasn't fought in whatever and hasn't won in even longer. I still think that he's the face. I still think he's the most visible icon that props up the UFC. However, I do also think that Sean O'Malley is more of a face for the newer generation, right? I think there are a lot of newer MMA fans that may not know Conor McGregor the way that we know him. And it is possible that they just might know Sean a little bit more and maybe appreciate him a little bit more just because they've seen that rise the way that we saw Conor McGregor's rise. And while I'm not comparing the rises, just the experience itself, I think, has just led newer fans to gravitate towards him more as the face, perhaps.
I think maybe you could say what Conor is and was to us millennials, O'Malley is to Gen Z. But it's interesting. And I mean, I guess where I'm going with this is that I'm curious to think about, you know, what the UFC, what the promotion, what Dana thinks about O'Malley as being one of the faces. You know, this guy who, you know, he has cotton candy hair and the pink shorts, and he's such a character. He's such a character.
Yeah. He's a performer. He's a performer for sure. He knows it too. You know, and that's the thing I like about O'Malley is, you know, I don't have a problem with a what do you call them? Like a bit. I don't have a problem with a bit. I don't even have a problem with you like having a thing or whatever. Obviously we've talked about guys on here that have abused that whole deal, but Sean O'Malley's is fun. He has fun with it. And you know, he's real when he needs to be real. He's ridiculous when he can be ridiculous. And to be honest, I just find it all really fun. I'm having a good time with the O'Malley era.
He's fun. I mean, for sure. Yes. And I think he is an incredible fighter. And I love tuning in and watching him fight every single time since he came onto the scene. It's like, this is a guy that you just kind of are drawn to watch because you know what he brings to the table. But I find him, you know, he's very flamboyant, obviously, in how he dresses. and how he presents himself. But then when he like opens his mouth, I find him to be actually kind of introverted and soft spoken. And yeah, he talks a little bit of shit from a very sort of a confident standpoint, but I don't find him to be like that kind of outgoing superstar. He obviously like he draws a lot of attention because of how he presents himself with his hair and his clothes, but he's just an interesting package to just to think about.
I do always notice that he talks like respectful shit.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't know him at all and you saw like the image of him, I think you would expect him to be more of a cocky shit talking guy than he actually is.
Exactly.
So that always kind of resonates with me.
Yeah.